A father hides his disabled child from his new wife until the child speaks a truth that makes everyone cry. Garrett Ashford thought he could keep his past separate from his new life. He believed that hiding his disabled child was the only way to protect both his marriage and his son. But when the child finally speaks, the words shake everyone to their core. What truth had been buried for so long, and how will his wife react when she learns what he's been hiding? Before we begin, tell us in the comments, do you believe love should come with conditions? And if you enjoy powerful emotional stories, don't forget to like this video to support the channel. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the story. Rain drummed against the broad windows of the Ashford residence, a sprawling home nestled in a quiet suburban cul-de-sac. Inside, Garrett Ashford paced across the living room, glancing at the clock. His new wife, Caroline, would be home any minute from her volunteer shift at the local community center. He took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. Garrett was in his mid-30s, tall, with neatly combed dark hair and a poised air that came from managing a successful small business. He had recently remarried after losing his first wife to a sudden illness years ago. Friends and colleagues were happy for him, believing he deserved a fresh start. Caroline was gentle, compassionate, and dedicated to helping others. In theory, they were a perfect match. They had married just 3 months earlier, glowing with hope. And yet, in those 3 months, Garrett had concealed the biggest truth of his life, his 9-year-old daughter, Leah. Leah was born with a condition that affected her mobility and speech. His first wife, Sarah, had adored Leah, but after Sarah's passing, Garrett had felt overwhelmed by the responsibility. His complicated grief turned to shame and fear when he thought about how others viewed Leah's disability. He worried Caroline wouldn't accept or love Leah. So before the wedding, he arranged for a private caretaker named Ruth to look after Leah in a hidden wing of the house. This wing included 2 rooms and a small bath, rarely visited by guests. It shamed him to admit he was hiding Leah, but each time he tried telling Caroline, panic choked him. He imagined Caroline's disappointed face or her deciding this arrangement was too difficult, so he postponed the truth, day after day. Now, listening to the rain, Garrett felt guilt knot his stomach. Leah rarely complained, but he sensed her loneliness growing. She asked about his new wife in a quiet voice, looking hopeful. He dodged the question. Meanwhile, Caroline occasionally asked why a hallway door was always locked. He lied, mumbling about old storage or repairs. His deceit weighed heavily. He checked his watch again. Caroline was late, possibly traffic. He hurried to that locked door, opening it carefully. He stepped inside a small corridor leading to Leah's room. Warm lamplight glowed under the door. He tapped lightly. "It's Dad." Ruth, the caretaker, opened the door. She was in her early 40s, kind-eyed, wearing a gentle expression. Leah sat on her bed with pillows propped around her, reading a children's book with pictures. Her thin legs, affected by her condition, were stretched out carefully. She looked up, eyes brightening at Garrett's appearance. "Daddy," she said, voice slightly slurred from her speech impairment. "You're back." He smiled softly, crossing to her side. "I am. Caroline will be home soon. Are you okay, sweetie?" She nodded, setting aside the book. "I want to meet her." His heart twisted. "I know, we'll do that soon," he mumbled, feeling a stab of guilt. "Just a bit more time, all right?" Leah's shoulders sagged. She tried to smile. "Yes, Daddy." Ruth folded her arms, a slight frown crossing her features. She had grown fond of Leah, protective even. "Mr. Ashford, the child can't be hidden forever." He winced at her directness. "I know," he whispered. I need to find the right moment. Caroline's adjusting to married life. I don't want to overwhelm her." Ruth looked unconvinced. "The longer you wait, the harder it becomes." Before Garrett could respond, the front door downstairs opened. Caroline's cheerful voice drifted up. Garrett stiffened. He glanced at Leah, who wore a hopeful expression, as if expecting him to invite Caroline inside right now. But fear flooded him. He mumbled, "I'll be back soon," and left, locking the door behind him. He hurried down to greet Caroline. She was shaking out her damp umbrella in the foyer, her auburn hair damp from the rain. She offered a warm smile. "Hi, honey," she said, stepping forward for a hug. Garrett embraced her, forcing a steady tone. Hi, sweetheart. Busy day? She nodded. Exhausting but rewarding. The kids at the community center asked if we could do more crafts next time. Then she tilted her head, scanning his tense face. Everything okay? You look stressed. He forced a casual shrug. Just a bit tired. I have a lot on my mind. She brushed a hand over his cheek. We can talk about it if you want. I'm here. His guilt flared again, but he faked a small smile. Don't worry, I'll be fine. Then, he guided her toward the living room, changing the topic to ask about her day. Inside, his mind churned with the knowledge that upstairs, behind a locked door, his little girl sat waiting to meet her new stepmother. As the storm raged outside, Garrett prayed he could find the courage to end this charade before it destroyed the life he was trying to build with Caroline. But each day, he felt the walls of his own fear closing in, uncertain if he'd ever truly tell the truth. Over the next week, the tension in Garrett's home mounted in subtle ways. Caroline sensed something off each time she glanced at that locked corridor door. She asked about it once more. Is there a reason that part of the house is always locked? Garrett tried to remain calm. Just some old storage. I need to sort it eventually. She gave him a curious look but didn't press, choosing to respect his privacy for now. He exhaled, grateful yet troubled. How long can I keep lying? Meanwhile, Leah grew more restless. Whenever Garrett visited her room, she said the same thing. Daddy, can I meet Caroline soon? She usually smiled bravely, but her eyes held a quiet hurt. She longed to be included, to feel normal. Garrett didn't know how to explain that he was scared of Caroline's possible reaction. One evening, he found Ruth helping Leah with physical therapy exercises for her legs. She used supportive braces to practice standing, though she tired quickly. Garrett watched from the doorway, both proud and sorrowful. Proud that Leah persevered, sorrowful that he kept her hidden. After the exercises, Ruth confronted him gently. Sir, I'm worried about Leah's emotional well-being. She's smart enough to realize she's being hidden. He hung his head. I know, he murmured, voice tight. I'm a coward. Caroline is so sweet, but I don't know how she'll react. I'm terrified that she might resent me for concealing Leah all this time, or that she won't be ready for the responsibilities of a disabled child. Ruth's gaze softened. You'll never know if you don't try. Have faith in your wife's compassion, and think of Leah. She deserves acceptance, not secrecy. He sighed. You're right. I'll find a moment soon. I promise. That moment almost arrived the next day. Caroline came home from errands earlier than expected. She heard voices upstairs. Garrett reading a children's story. Curiosity pricked her. She followed the sound down the corridor. At the locked door, she listened, hearing a child's soft laugh and Garrett's tender murmur. A child? Heart pounding, she tried the handle. Locked. She pressed her ear to the door, certain she heard a young girl's giggle. Why would Garrett hide a child? Could it be a neighbor? A niece? Before she could act, footsteps approached from inside. Panicking, Caroline rushed back down the hall to the living room. Moments later, Garrett emerged from the secret corridor, oblivious to her near discovery. She forced a casual expression, though her mind buzzed with questions. Later that night, she decided to ask him. They sat on the sofa, sipping tea. Caroline turned, mustering courage. Garrett, can I ask something personal? He tensed slightly. Sure. She set down her cup. Today I heard voices, like a child's laughter, behind that locked corridor. Is there something you're not telling me? His stomach flipped. He swallowed, anxiety flooding him. Well, what exactly did you hear? She paused, choosing her words carefully. It sounded like you were reading a story to a little girl. I'm not accusing you of anything bad, but I'm concerned. Please be honest with me. His heart pounded so loudly he could barely think. This was it, the moment to confess. He opened his mouth, half choking on the words, but the old fear of rejection or condemnation froze him. Instead, he gave a feeble attempt at denial, faking a casual laugh. Oh, that was just an audio recording I was practicing for a friend's child. Caroline frowned, suspicion clouding her features. An audio recording? He nodded woodenly, forcing a smile. Yes, sorry if it startled you. He quickly changed the subject, praising her volunteer work at the community center. She let him redirect, but her expression remained clouded. She doesn't believe me, he realized with alarm. After she went to bed, he stayed up in the kitchen, head in his hands. This lie is unraveling. He felt trapped. Telling the truth seemed terrifying, but so was continuing to lie to his loving, patient wife. Eventually, he tiptoed upstairs to Leah's room to check on her. She was asleep, a small stuffed toy cradled in her arms. He watched her for a long moment, guilt pressing down. He resolved again, tomorrow, I'll find the words and tell Caroline everything. Yet he had made that promise to himself before. Each day, he found an excuse, paralyzed by shame. Unaware that events would soon force the truth into the open, whether he was ready or not. The following weekend, Garrett faced an unexpected complication. His in-laws planned to visit. Caroline's parents, David and Linda Pierce, were warm people but also quite observant. They had met Garrett only briefly before the wedding, as the marriage came about relatively quickly. Now they wanted a proper visit at the Ashford house, sharing lunch together. Caroline was excited, tidying the kitchen, arranging flowers. Meanwhile, Garrett's panic soared. How would he hide Leah from not just Caroline, but also from her parents? Could he keep Leah quiet behind that door, especially if they spent hours in the house? Early Saturday morning, Garrett rushed to the caretaker's quarters. "Ruth," he said, voice trembling, "Caroline's parents are coming. We need to ensure Leah stays in her room with the door locked, okay? Please keep her occupied. I'll bring meals in. I can't risk them hearing or seeing her." Ruth's expression hardened. She had endured this secrecy for months, but never liked it. "This is cruel, Mr. Ashford. She's your daughter, not some secret you hide whenever guests come. She's aware enough to realize she's being hidden on purpose." He swallowed. "I know, but I'm so close to telling Caroline. Just not now with her parents. Please, just do this for me one last time." Ruth pursed her lips, reluctant. Then she relented. "Fine, but you're hurting Leah more each day." He sighed, nodding. "I'm sorry." Caroline's parents arrived late morning, bearing a tray of homemade muffins. David was tall and boisterous, Linda more reserved. They exchanged warm hugs with Caroline, polite greetings with Garrett. The group gathered in the living room for coffee. Caroline was all smiles, though a hint of worry lingered in her eyes. She occasionally glanced at the corridor door, as if thinking about that child's laughter she heard. David chatted about his retirement hobbies. Linda admired the decor. All seemed pleasant, until Linda noticed the locked corridor. She asked casually, "What's behind that door, Garrett? A home office?" Garrett forced a laugh, his mouth going dry. Just old storage. It's messy in there. No real need to check it out." He tried to sound casual, but Linda's inquisitive gaze lingered a bit longer than he liked. Caroline kept quiet, though Garrett saw a flicker of doubt cross her face again. He tried to steer the conversation to other topics. Over lunch in the dining room, David told funny stories from Caroline's childhood. Caroline laughed, bright and loving. Garrett found himself smiling, thinking of how wonderful it would be to have a normal family life with her, if only he could integrate Leah openly. But as the hours passed, he grew more tense. He sneaked away once to deliver lunch to Leah and Ruth. The caretaker gave him a stern look. "Leah's upset," she whispered. "She keeps asking why she can't come say hi to her new grandparents." Garrett's heart clenched. "Tell her I love her. Soon I'll fix this." Ruth shook her head, stepping aside so he could see Leah. She sat in a chair, eyes brimming with tears. Garrett crouched beside her, stroking her hair. "Sweetheart, I'm sorry. I promise I'll introduce you to them soon. Just not today." Leah nodded, her voice trembling. "Okay, Daddy." But heartbreak was clear in her face. He left them, guilt eating him alive. Returning to the dining room, he forced a cheerful front. Caroline eyed his troubled expression. He knew she suspected more than he was revealing. Finally, late in the afternoon, David and Linda prepared to leave. They gathered at the front door, sharing farewells. Linda gave Caroline a knowing look. "Everything's lovely, dear, but is there something you two want to tell us?" "I sense a bit of tension." Caroline frowned. "I'm not sure what you mean, Mom." David cleared his throat. "We just want you both to be happy. If there's any secret or stress, we're here to help." Garrett mustered a weak smile. "Thank you, but everything is fine, really." The parents departed with polite hugs, though Linda's concerned glance lingered on Garrett for a moment. He forced a wave as they drove off. Then the door shut, leaving only silence in the house. Caroline turned to Garrett. voice quiet. Garrett, it's time you explain. I can't ignore this feeling anymore. She glanced at the corridor door again, the one he always kept locked. You're keeping something huge from me, aren't you? He stared at her, chest tight. Fear battled love. Yes, he whispered. I am, and I'm sorry. Her eyes glimmered with tears. Then please, trust me enough to tell me. Don't you believe I can handle the truth? He pressed his lips together, heart pounding. The moment had arrived, finally. Time to face the consequences of months of deception. Caroline, come with me, he said softly, stepping toward that locked door with shaky hands on the key. I need to show you something. Garrett led Caroline down the corridor, his key rattling in the lock. Inside, the hallway was warm, lit by a soft lamp. He heard Ruth's hushed voice behind the door at the end. With a trembling hand, he pushed it open. Leah's room lay beyond, simple, cozy, with a bed, a small desk, and a wheelchair near the wall. Ruth stood by the window, her expression a mix of relief and apprehension. Leah sat in a chair, flipping through a picture book. She looked up when they entered, eyes widening at the sight of Caroline. Garrett's voice caught in his throat. He gestured for Caroline to step forward. Leah, this is Caroline, my wife. Leah's eyes sparkled, a hesitant smile curling her lips. She glanced at her father, then at Caroline. She murmured, "Hi." Her speech was slightly slurred, but her greeting was clear enough. Caroline froze for a second, shock rippling across her face. Then, carefully, she approached the little girl. "Hello, Leah," she said, voice trembling with emotion. "I didn't know you were here." Leah looked at Garrett, who nodded encouragingly. Then she looked back at Caroline, studying her with curious eyes. "Daddy said, you're nice," she said softly. Caroline swallowed, tears brimming. "I hope I can be," she whispered, kneeling down to Leah's level. "I'm sorry I didn't meet you sooner." Leah gave a tentative nod. Ruth hovered nearby, discreetly stepping back to let them talk. Garrett's heart hammered. He expected Caroline to lash out at him, furious for hiding such a major secret. Instead, she focused on Leah with gentle compassion. Finally, Caroline turned to Garrett, eyes shining with hurt and confusion. "Why would you hide your own daughter from me?" she asked, voice tight. He exhaled shakily. "I was afraid," he admitted, running a hand through his hair. "I was afraid you'd see her disability and think it was too much, that you'd leave me, or resent me for deceiving you. I was ashamed of my own cowardice. I didn't want to lose you." Caroline's tears spilled. "Oh, Garrett, how could you think that?" His voice cracked. "Because I lost Sarah. And Leah's condition got worse after her mother died. I panicked. I worried no one else would accept the responsibility, so I locked her away, as if she was an inconvenience. I hate myself for it." A strangled sob escaped Caroline. She rose to her feet, hugging herself. "You lied to me for months, Garrett. You made vows at our wedding and you never mentioned your own child. Do you know how that makes me feel?" He hung his head, tears burning. "I'm sorry. I truly am. I never wanted to hurt you, or Leah." Leah watched them, clutching her book, sensing the emotional tension but unsure how to respond. Garrett could see her gaze flick anxiously between them, fear in her eyes that Caroline might reject them both. Caroline's breathing shook. She turned away, tears streaking her cheeks. For a few painful moments, the room was silent, except for the muffled hum of the house's ventilation. Then, slowly, Caroline faced Leah again. She forced a small, brave smile. "Leah, may I sit with you? I'd like to talk if that's okay." Leah nodded, scooting over. Caroline sat on the edge of the bed, wiping her eyes. She gently took Leah's hand, noticing the braces on her legs. "You're very brave," Caroline said softly. "I'm sorry we didn't meet sooner." Leah studied her, then looked at her father. With a trembling voice she asked, "Dad, you said Caroline might not love me?" Her eyes welled with tears. "Was that because I'm different?" Garrett's heart shattered. Hearing Leah repeat his own misguided fear tore him apart. "Oh, sweetheart, no," he choked out. "I was just scared. Caroline is kind. She's not the one who was afraid. I was." Caroline's eyes widened, shock and sorrow warring in her expression. She gently squeezed Leah's hand. "I love kids, Leah. I'm sure I can learn how best to help you. But please, don't think I'd reject you for something you can't control." Leah's lip quivered. "Really?" Caroline nodded firmly, tears slipping free again. "Really?" She turned a piercing gaze on Garrett. "But this changes things. Hiding her was a huge betrayal of trust. I need time to process it. Garrett bowed his head. I understand. I'll do whatever it takes to earn your forgiveness, and to show Leah she never has to be hidden again. Leah's anxious posture eased slightly. A glimmer of hope lit her eyes. Ruth stepped forward, tears shining. Thank you, Mrs. Ashford. Leah's waited so long to be included. Caroline swallowed, struggling with her emotions. She brushed a trembling hand over Leah's hair. No more secrets, she said, voice thick with resolve. We'll face this together, okay? Leah nodded, hugging her new stepmother around the waist. Caroline froze, surprised, then wrapped her arms around the young girl, sobbing quietly. Garrett watched, tears gathering in his own eyes. This was the confrontation he had dreaded, but perhaps it held the promise of healing. Though Caroline tried to remain calm, the weight of Garrett's deception struck her deeply. After meeting Leah, she excused herself to the guest bedroom for some space. Garrett paced outside the closed door, heart heavy. He wanted to knock, to beg her understanding, but he sensed she needed time. Leah, sensing her father's anguish, asked if she had caused trouble. "Daddy, is Caroline mad because of me?" she whispered. Garrett knelt beside his daughter, hugging her gently. "No, honey, it's because I lied. None of this is your fault." He forced a smile. "Caroline likes you, I promise." Leah nodded, though she still looked worried. Meanwhile, inside the guest room, Caroline sat on the bed, tears of anger and hurt rolling down her cheeks. She still loved Garrett. She adored Leah already. The child's gentle spirit touched her heart. But she felt deeply betrayed that Garrett never trusted her enough to share such a huge part of his life. She stared at her phone, considering who to confide in. Her parents? A friend? Eventually she called her mother, Linda, in a choked voice. Linda picked up, concern evident. Caroline admitted the truth. Garrett had a disabled daughter he'd hidden for months. Linda gasped. "That's a terrible secret to keep. How do you feel?" Caroline sobbed. "I'm furious and sad, but the girl is innocent. She's sweet and obviously has needed acceptance. I just can't grasp why he didn't tell me earlier." Her mother's tone softened. "Maybe fear got the better of him. People do irrational things to protect themselves from rejection." Caroline nodded, tears slowing. "Yes, I do see he's terrified, but it doesn't excuse the pain it causes. I just need to sort through my emotions." Linda offered gentle support, urging Caroline to do what her heart said. Then Caroline ended the call, exhaling shakily. She dried her eyes, realizing she couldn't hide in this room forever. She needed to talk to Garrett, to figure out how they could move forward. That evening, after Leah had dinner with Ruth, Caroline found Garrett alone in the living room. He was slumped on the sofa, face etched with guilt. She approached quietly, crossing her arms. He looked up, eyes filled with remorse. "Caroline, I'm so sorry." She sat in a chair across from him. For a moment, she studied him. Then she spoke, voice steady despite trembling inside. "Garrett, I need you to understand how hurt I feel. You married me without telling me I had a stepdaughter. That's enormous." He bowed his head. "I know. I have no defense. I was selfish, worried you'd run if you knew. I see now how unfair that was to you and to Leah." Caroline swallowed. "I'm not leaving you, but it won't be easy to trust you. You have to earn that back, and we need to figure out how we integrate Leah into our daily life. She deserves to be part of our family, fully." Relief and humility washed over Garrett. "I'll do anything. I promise. No more lies." He paused, tears gathering. "I want to be a good father to her. I just got stuck in my own fear." Caroline's gaze softened. "I understand. Fear can make people do hurtful things, but we can't let that define us." They talked for hours, addressing practical matters, rearranging the house so Leah's room wasn't hidden, ensuring Caroline learned about her disability and how to support her. Caroline insisted on having Leah dine with them at the main table, watch movies in the living room, go outside for fresh air, like any child. She refused to treat Leah as an embarrassment. Garrett wept softly, overwhelmed by Caroline's compassion. "Thank you for not giving up on me, on us." She reached out, took his hand. "I married you because I love you, Garrett. I won't pretend this is okay. It was a huge betrayal, but I believe we can heal if we work together." They ended the night with a tentative embrace, both weary but hopeful. Upstairs, Leah slept unaware that her father and Caroline had finally taken a step toward including her openly. In the morning, Garrett escorted Caroline to Leah's room. Together, they invited Leah to have breakfast in the main kitchen. The child's face lit up. She gripped her walker, her steps unsteady but determined. Caroline walked alongside, ready to help but not smothering her. Ruth stood at the door, tears shining as she watched them all venture into the rest of the house together for the first time. It was a small start, a new routine. No more locked doors, no more hiding. But old habits and insecurities don't vanish overnight. Garrett and Caroline still had to confront the deeper emotional wounds that might surface, including the possibility that Leah had internalized feelings of shame. Yet seeing Leah's delighted smile at the breakfast table gave them hope that love and acceptance could triumph if they faced every challenge side by side. Despite the new arrangement, tension still lingered. Leah's integration into daily life brought fresh challenges. She needed help with certain tasks: bathing, dressing, moving around the house. Caroline was eager to assist, but Garrett hovered anxiously, fearful that Leah might burden Caroline too much. One afternoon, as Caroline tried to show Leah a new game in the living room, Garrett hovered, constantly stepping in, offering to take over. Caroline finally pulled him aside, exasperated. "Garrett, let me help her. I'm her stepmother now. I want to bond with her. You don't have to guard me from every little thing." He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. I worry you'll find it too much." Caroline's eyes flashed with a mix of annoyance and sympathy. "I'm not fragile, Garrett. You need to let me form my own relationship with Leah. If you keep jumping in, you're telling me you still don't trust me." Her words stung, but he realized she was right. He nodded sheepishly, stepping back. Leah watched from her seat, sensing the strained exchange. She whispered, "Dad, it's okay. Caroline's nice." Garrett mustered a small smile. "I know, sweetie, I just have to let go." Meanwhile, Leah blossomed under Caroline's affection. She loved showing Caroline her favorite books, letting her read aloud. She looked forward to mealtime with the whole family. Ruth, seeing the positive changes, quietly decided it might soon be time for her role to shift. Leah no longer needed a secret caretaker, but rather a supportive mother figure, which Caroline was becoming. However, there was one more crucial hurdle. Leah struggled with her speech, especially under stress. One evening, she tried telling Caroline about a memory with her birth mother. She stammered, tears forming when the words wouldn't come out easily. Caroline responded by gently encouraging her, waiting patiently, never showing frustration. Leah finally managed to convey her meaning, and Caroline praised her bravery, hugging her. Witnessing that moment from across the room, Garrett felt emotions surge. He realized Caroline's acceptance was exactly what he had feared he would never find. Shame pricked him again, recalling how he kept Leah locked away. "What a fool I was," he thought, swallowing tears. Still, in the back of his mind, he worried that Caroline might have lingering resentment toward him. He tried to make it up by doing chores, showering her with small gestures of affection. She appreciated it, but gently reminded him that trust needed time to rebuild. One night, as the three of them were watching a children's movie in the living room, Leah snuggled beside Caroline, giggling at a funny scene. Garrett saw how relaxed they appeared. Like a real family. His heart warmed, yet a small voice said, "I need to ask Leah about her feelings." He realized he had never truly apologized to his daughter for hiding her. He felt the weight of that apology. So, after the movie ended, and Caroline went to wash dishes, Garrett invited Leah to walk with him to the backyard patio. The evening was mild, stars dotting the sky. He found a bench and settled Leah beside him. The night breeze carried the scent of summer flowers. She looked up at him curiously. "Daddy?" He swallowed, hands fidgeting. "Leah, I want to say I'm sorry. Really sorry. I was wrong to keep you hidden. I was afraid, but that's no excuse. You should have never felt like a secret." Her eyes glimmered. She nodded slowly. "I was lonely, sometimes," she said softly. "But I knew you loved me." He exhaled, relief mixing with guilt. "I do, with all my heart. I let fear control me. I promise, from now on, you'll be part of everything." She studied him, tears brimming. "Caroline is good. She's not mad at me?" He shook his head fiercely. "No, sweetheart, She loves you. She's only upset at me for not telling her sooner, but we'll work through it. Leah blinked, a tear sliding down her cheek. I just want a family. He pulled her close, voice trembling. You have one now. Me, Caroline, all of us together. He kissed the top of her head, tears burning his eyes. I'm sorry it took so long. They sat in silence under the stars, father and daughter sharing a moment of unity that had been denied them by secrecy. After a while, Caroline stepped onto the patio, seeing them on the bench. She smiled gently. Everything okay out here? Leah looked to her father, then to Caroline. Yes, she whispered. We're okay. Caroline joined them, placing a warm hand on Leah's shoulder. The three of them gazed at the night sky, an unspoken sense of closeness settling in. But though they were healing, none suspected that Leah herself would soon speak words so profound and raw that it would leave them all in tears, words that would truly mend the final cracks in their fragile new family. A few days later, Caroline arranged a small housewarming gathering for friends and neighbors, wanting them to meet Leah in a casual way. She invited some close acquaintances, plus a few of Garrett's colleagues. Garrett was uneasy about so many people seeing Leah, but he breathed through his nerves. This was the life they needed, one where Leah wasn't hidden. On the day of the gathering, the living room buzzed with chatter. Food trays sat on the table, music played softly. Leah stayed in a comfortable armchair. She wore a new blouse Caroline had helped her pick out, and her hair was neatly braided by Caroline's careful hands. Guests arrived, initially curious about the young girl with mobility braces, but most greeted her kindly. Some commented, "We didn't know Garrett had a daughter," or, "What a lovely child." Leah smiled shyly, sometimes replying with a quiet, "Thank you." Each time, Caroline stayed nearby, offering reassurance. But soon, one of Garrett's old acquaintances, a blunt man named Spencer, arrived. Spencer was known for speaking his mind without filter. He eyed Leah with mild shock. "Wow, Garrett, you never mentioned having a disabled child. That's quite a handful." He said it in a casual, almost dismissive tone that made Garrett's blood boil. Caroline stiffened, exchanging a wary glance with her husband. Leah looked hurt, her expression falling. She tried to keep a brave face, but the sting of Spencer's words was evident. Another guest quickly changed the subject, but the damage was done. Leah's eyes lowered, tears threatening. Garrett wanted to snap at Spencer for his insensitivity, but tried to keep the peace in front of everyone. The party continued, though tension lingered. After most guests had left, only a few lingered, chatting. Leah sat quietly at the corner of the sofa. Caroline approached, noticing Leah's troubled look. She knelt beside her, brushing back a stray hair. "Sweetheart, are you okay?" Leah swallowed, then looked over at her father, who was tidying up some cups in the kitchen. She glanced back at Caroline, tears trembling on her lashes. I heard that man say I'm a handful." Her speech was halting but clear enough. Do you both think I'm a burden?" Caroline's heart cracked. She took Leah's hand. "Absolutely not. Don't ever think that. Spencer was rude, and he doesn't know what he's talking about." A tear slid down Leah's cheek. "Then, why did Daddy hide me? If I wasn't a burden, why did he keep me secret?" The words shook with raw pain. She had never put it so directly before. Caroline felt a surge of empathy for the child's confusion. She realized Leah had never fully voiced these feelings, even though she might have wondered them for ages. Caroline swallowed, tears burning in her own eyes. "Your dad was wrong. He was scared, but it wasn't about you being a burden. It was about his own fear of losing people he loved. He's so sorry." Just then, Garrett walked up, overhearing part of Leah's question. He froze, cups in hand. "Leah," he began, voice trembling. Leah looked at him with tear-filled eyes. Then she spoke words that hit like a dagger. "Daddy, you said you loved me, but you hid me like I'm something to be ashamed of." The living room fell silent. Caroline's breath caught, tears slipping free. Garrett set down the cups, rushing to Leah's side, kneeling down. "Sweetheart, no, I was never ashamed of you," he said, voice breaking. "I was ashamed of myself, for failing you, for not being brave enough to let the world see you. Because I thought I might lose Caroline if she found out too late. I was wrong, Leah. I'm so sorry." Tears streamed down Leah's cheeks. She took a shaky breath, struggling to form her words. "Then, if you love me, please, don't hide me ever again." His own tears fell freely now. "I won't," he promised, voice thick. "I swear I love you more than anything." Caroline gently placed her hand on Leah's shoulder, tears in her eyes too. "Leah, you are precious. You're not a burden. You are part of this family, my family too." Leah's lower lip quivered. She whispered, "I just want to be normal, to be with you." Caroline stroked her hair gently. "You are with us, Leah. We'll figure it all out, together." At that moment, all three of them broke down in tears, hugging one another in the quiet living room. The child's words, so honest and vulnerable, shattered any lingering walls of shame or fear. Garrett held Leah close, finally understanding how deeply he had hurt his daughter by hiding her existence. Caroline embraced them both, her tears a mixture of sorrow and relief that they were finally addressing the core of the pain. Ruth, who had been standing near the doorway, watched the scene with tears in her own eyes. She silently slipped away, giving them space to bond as a true family at last. For minutes, they just cried together, no more lies or denials. In that vulnerable moment, the family Garrett had yearned for was finally forming. The father, the stepmother, and the child who spoke a truth that set them all free. In the weeks that followed, the Ashford household transformed. The door to Leah's wing stayed wide open, no longer locked. Leah moved into a brighter, bigger bedroom near her father's and Caroline's. They decorated it with cheerful colors, displayed her artwork, and let her pick a new desk for practicing reading and writing. Caroline and Garrett also found a family counselor to help them navigate the emotional aftermath of the secrecy. The counselor encouraged Leah to express her feelings openly and Garrett to let go of his shame. Caroline supported them both, learning more about Leah's disability and how to advocate for her needs. Leah's confidence blossomed. She ventured outside, enjoying short strolls in the backyard. Caroline discovered that Leah loved flowers and helped her plant a small garden. Ruth still assisted with care, but in a less isolated manner, glad to see Leah fully integrated into daily life. As time passed, Garrett's marriage to Caroline grew stronger. He had feared she would leave him upon discovering his lie, but her compassion proved deeper than his anxiety. She forgave him, and they worked together to rebuild trust. He realized how lucky he was to have someone who not only accepted his daughter, but cherished her. One evening, they all sat around the dinner table, Garrett, Caroline, Leah, and Ruth, sharing a meal like any family. Leah mentioned a school for children with special physical needs. Caroline beamed, excited at the idea of enrolling Leah so she could learn and socialize. Garrett squeezed his wife's hand, grateful. They had a long journey ahead, but the hardest part, hiding Leah, was behind them. The child who once lived in a secret room had found her voice and her place, and in that little girl's truth, they had all discovered the meaning of unconditional love. If you like this story, be sure to give it a thumbs up. It really helps the channel grow. And if you enjoy stories that embraces your heart, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new upload. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this one. Let me know in the comments what stood out to you the most. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.